I cheated and then got cheated on. Hey guys, this is a story that has taken me a lot to have the guts to even share because I, F19, now, F21, am so ashamed. This story takes place about a year and a half ago, when I was stationed in Yokosuka, Japan. Around this time I was super new to the Navy. I just had left a school. I also left a household that was super strict when it came to boys, and I didn't have a lot of freedom. When I arrived in Japan to begin with, I was super boy crazy. I had never got as much attention as I was receiving when I arrived to the ship. I didn't know how to handle it. So whatever advances that were made towards me, I took. It was almost overwhelming. This story begins with a man I met. His name was Rashad, M23. I met him at a barbecue pit when I was technically supposed to be meeting a completely different guy. Rashad and I started talking and we hit it off immediately. I remember thinking he was very attractive. I was attracted to him at first. I remember leaving the barbecue pit that night and thinking, who was that guy? I even forgot about the guy I was supposed to meet originally. A couple days later I had to go to grab food for a friend who was on duty and I'm waiting on it when I see Rashad again. I remember thinking was fate. He offered to walk with me to drop off the food and then walk me back to the barracks and I agreed. We were playful and he asked me on a date to this Korean barbecue place. I said yes, of course, because why not? On our first day we talked. Our alone time was super easily charged. Even before we left for our date, the date went as well as can be expected. We came back to my barracks and then we did have sex. This routine continues for weeks, and when I asked him one night what we were, he said we were seeing how things go. In my head that meant we aren't dating, this is casual, so I proceeded with that mentality. During my time getting to know Rashad I met Jeroen, M21. Jeroen was a boy in my department I worked with. He was really nonchalant and really chill, but we flirted all the time. I'm the one who asked for his snap and texted him that he was very attractive. He said the same to me. A couple nights later I was cooking and Jeroen asked to come over. We didn't do anything together, I just gave him some food. The next day Rashad found out and he was pretty upset. I guess he thought that I was supposed to be exclusive with him, but we never established what we were. After a very heated conversation with Rashad, he asked me to officially be his girlfriend. I agreed because I liked Rashad. He was smart and he made me feel smart, and he listened to me and made me feel good easily, mentally and emotionally. Rashad went on deployment the next day. I know I definitely should have stopped talking to Jeroen now that I was in a relationship. Jeroen and I continued hanging out when Rashad was gone, and about a week and a half later he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes. I know I shouldn't have, but I also liked that Jeroen was sure about me. His intentions were to be in a relationship from the jump, and he didn't take me being with another man for him to see me and be like, I want her. I liked how strong and steady and sure he was. Things with Jeroen and I started to get more serious. We spent almost every day after work together. And we just enjoyed being around one another. About a month and a half into my relationship with Jeroen, Rashad came back from deployment for a weekend. Don't get me wrong, I was happy to see Rashad, but I wasn't being faithful. So the weekend Rashad was in town, I told Jeroen that I was spending the weekend with some of my friends from the ship Rashad was on when I was really just spending it with Rashad. Rashad and I spent the time we had catching up and doing what couples do when their significant other returns from deployment. That Sunday night before Rashad went back on deployment, I had a command party that I was going to with Jeroen. After the command party we all went out to the clubs and were having the best time. Jeroen left to go to the other club. I told him I would catch up because I was talking to another friend. That's when Rashad walked in. As Jeroen was walking out, he had given me a hug and said that he was on a turn-in early because he was going back on deployment the following morning. I gave him a hug and wished him a good night and told him I was going to miss him and that I'd be there when he got home. After we parted ways I went to the other club to meet Jeroen. I met up with Jeroen and we were dancing, and I see Rashad on the other side of the room. I had to think fast and get one of them out of the club, and it had to be Rashad because he was closest to the exit. I watched Rashad make a slick comment to a girl and had to pretend to be upset, saying, "Are you really flirting with another girl in front of me?" I ran out of the club and he followed me, which is exactly what I wanted. He hugged me saying how sorry he was, and I felt worse about what I was doing. Because he was being so sincere, I wanted to cry, not because of the flirting but because I was being a shitty person, but I couldn't bring myself to break up with either of them. So Rashad and I part ways for the night. I don't return to the club, I just go back to base because my stomach was in knots and I felt like such a bad person. Jeroen finds me at the barracks and just lays with me. We don't talk because I don't know what to say and I can't look at his face, and because I was a coward I couldn't muster up the bravery to tell him. I was his first everything and I didn't want to break his heart like that. So after this it was my turn to be on deployment. It was okay though because Jerome and I were together and it meant that I could just be with him and I wasn't alone. Jerome and I broke up a little while before we came back in port. Partly because I just wanted to be with Rashad and I was feeling guilty, as partly because I wanted him to experience other girls so I wouldn't feel as bad for being with Rashad. Rashad and I saw each other again and he asked me if I had been seeing anyone else while he was gone, and I of course said no because I was again a selfish coward. A couple weeks later Rashad had checked my phone and had found out about Jerome and wanted to work things out still, which shocked me even more than I realized. I should have just let him go. I didn't. I went back on deployment again, and because Jerome and I were around each other all the time we were back together while on deployment. I later broke up Jerome officially because we were arguing so much that deployment as it seemed to be getting toxic. And even though I deserved it, Rashad was saying some pretty harsh things to me, like how there were so many girls who wanted my spot and that I better step up, and as much I deserved it, it didn't mean it didn't hurt to hear. So when we all got back from deployment I decided to show Rashad how loyal and true I could be with him. But I messed up and had this picture of this gay Marine friend kissing my cheek, and because it was a guy he got the wrong idea and we broke up officially. Because I was bored and lonely and sad I got back together with Jerome before officially leaving Japan and it ending between Jerome and I because of distance and our jobs. I know how wrong I was during this whole thing. I know that both of these men deserved honesty from me, and I know that I was not the best woman to either of them, and there's no if and buts about it. I was completely wrong. Fast forward a couple months after leaving Japan, I had rekindled things with a guy named Javan, M19. He and I had been dating in a school. We broke up because I was moving to Japan. When we got back together we spent every day with one another. I even met his family. Before he was set to leave on an 8-month deployment, by knowing my mistakes in my previous relationships I was so determined to not make the same mistake with him. So I focused on myself. I went to therapy. I did a lot of self-help courses. I started going to the gym. I really honed all my attention on bettering myself and not getting distracted by wanting to be with somebody physically, and we would email each other back and forth, and that was enough for me. It was hard at first. It was super hard. Everything changed the day before he was supposed to arrive home from his appointment. I was so excited to see him. I knew though in my heart that he wasn't going to be the same person he was 8 months ago. Deployment changes you, so I knew that I would probably have to be really patient and give him space. I found out the day before he was supposed to come home that he had been cheating on me 6 out of the 8 months he was gone, and he had gotten this woman pregnant and he had chosen her, and the way he told me that was by calling me on this girl's phone. I'm not gonna say that it did not suck, because it did, because I decided to wait and I decided to do right by this guy. I would be lying if I didn't feel like it was karma, though I know it was karma. I know that I deserve that, but it didn't mean that it didn't hurt. As for Rashad and I, we talk almost every day. I did ultimately end up apologizing for all the hurt that I had put him through. And he ended up forgiving me for everything that I did. He has made it clear that his intentions are for us to rekindle our relationship. And I would be lying if I told you guys that I wasn't ducking terrified, because as much as we talk about where we were both wrong, I am scared that he may have some unresolved issues with me, and I know that if we do get back together that I have to show him that he can trust me, because he is a big man of action and not words. So that's a very scary, but we talk every day, and he's going to come and visit me here in Virginia where I'm stationed now, and he's stationed in Maryland. As for Jerome and I, we rarely talk. We talk on occasion. We check on each other every so often, but we don't talk the way Rashad and I talk. Guys, I know this going to sound crazy, but Jerome never found out what was going on, and I know that it's probably super selfish of me to not even want him to know. As I stated previously, I was his first of many things, and a part of me doesn't want him to remember me as this bad person. I want him to know that he had a great first love, and I know that's probably super selfish, but I am terrified of him knowing what I was doing, and if he does know, he's very good at not letting on. Well guys, that's my story about how I've been on the receiving and the giving end of cheating.